close your eyes and let the world fade away. Welcome to Gaming Lore for Sleep. Tonight, we step into the silent, shadowy world of a modern legend. A soldier whose name is a whisper and whose face is a mystery. This is the story of Lieutenant Simon Ghost Riley. But what is the man behind the infamous skull mask? What forged a soldier so resilient he became known as a phantom on the battlefield? And what quiet humanity lies beneath the symbol of fear? Before we begin this journey into the heart of a ghost, I want to thank you for listening. I'm sending you so much love and positive energy for a deeply restful night. Now settle in, breathe deeply, and let the story of loyalty, loss, and legacy guide you into a peaceful sleep. Chapter 1: The Boy from Manchester. Let us drift back, not to a battlefield, but to a place of memory, to the rain-slicked streets of Manchester, England. This is where our story begins, with a boy named Simon Riley. Picture him not as the legendary soldier he would become, but as a child, his world defined by the four walls of a home that held more shadows than light. His father was a man of harsh words and harder hands, a presence that filled the house with a constant, low hum of tension. The childhood that should have been filled with play and discovery was, for Simon, a series of lessons in endurance. He learned to be quiet, to be small, to move through the halls like a whisper. In these quiet moments, he cultivated a rich inner world, a fortress within his own mind where he could be safe. He learned the language of subtle sounds, the creak of a floorboard that signaled a shifting mood, the specific turn of a key in the lock. This was his first training in observation, though he never knew it, a foundational skill built not in a military academy, but in the quiet fear of a childhood home. There were rare moments of respite, fleeting glimpses of a normal life. The simple joy of a warm meal, the scent of rain on concrete after a storm, the distant laughter of other children playing in the street. These small treasures he held onto, tiny embers of warmth in a cold environment. They were proof that a different world existed, one he could perhaps one day find for himself. This inner resilience, this ability to find light in the darkness, was the core of his spirit, the unbreakable part of him that would later define his call sign. As he grew older, the need to escape became a physical pull. He found a trade for a time, working as an apprentice butcher. The work was hard and honest, the clean, sharp lines of the tools a stark contrast to the messy, emotional landscape of his home. He learned precision, a steady hand, and the quiet focus of a craft. The world outside his small life was vast, and he began to feel its pull, a yearning for a purpose larger than the one he had been given. Then a seismic event shook the entire world, and in doing so, it shook the course of Simon Riley's life. The attacks of September 11th sent ripples across the globe, reaching all the way to a young man in Manchester searching for his place. A sense of duty, a need to protect, to stand against the kind of chaos that had shattered his own small world, compelled him to action. The path was clear. He left the butcher's shop behind and enlisted in the British Army. The structure of military life was, in a strange way, a relief. It was a different kind of hardship, but one with clear rules and a defined purpose. The chaos was external, something to be faced and conquered, not a silent threat waiting at home. He excelled here. His natural quietness was seen as steadiness. His keen observation skills made him an exceptional soldier. He was strong, resilient, and fiercely intelligent, rising quickly through the ranks. His exceptional performance did not go unnoticed. The eyes of the most elite unit in the British military, the Special Air Service, or SAS, fell upon him. This was not just another promotion, it was a transformation. He was entering a world of shadows and secrets, of missions that would never be recorded in public record. He was becoming a part of something few ever see, a guardian operating in the silent spaces of the world. It was here, in the SAS, that the man named Simon Riley began to forge the legend that would become Ghost. He learned the arts of sabotage, of silent infiltration, of becoming a phantom on the battlefield. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a specialist, a weapon to be deployed in the most sensitive and dangerous situations. He was respected, capable, and part of a brotherhood. For a time, perhaps, he found a semblance of the family he never had. And so, as we leave this chapter of his life, picture Simon not as a victim of his past, but as a product of his resilience. The quiet boy from Manchester had channeled his pain into purpose, his observation into skill. He was a formidable soldier, ready for any challenge. But the greatest tests of his spirit were still to come, waiting for him in the heat-baked hills of a foreign country. Let this thought of growth and strength soothe your mind as you drift deeper into relaxation. Chapter 2: The Grave in the Desert. Our story now drifts to a new landscape, far from the gray skis of England. Imagine the oppressive, dry heat of a desert. The sun, a relentless, blinding force in a sky of endless blue. This was where Simon Riley and his SAS team were deployed, tasked with a dangerous mission: to dismantle the brutal Zaragoza drug cartel, led by the ruthless Manuel Roba. The air was thick with dust and tension, every shadow a potential threat. The mission was a trap. Their own commanding officer, a man they trusted named Major Vernon, had betrayed them. He sold them out to Roba for his own gain. In an instant, the world turned from order to chaos. Simon and his brothers-in-arms were captured, overwhelmed, and taken to a hidden facility, a place of pain and despair designed to break the human spirit. This was not a prison. It was a hell. For 2 long months, Simon endured unimaginable torture. The goal was not just to extract information, but to break his will, to shatter his mind, and remake him into a puppet for the cartel. Yet, through the constant, grinding agony, the core of Simon Riley held firm. The quiet, resilient boy from Manchester had grown into a man of unbreakable fortitude. He became a rock for his fellow soldiers, a symbol of defiance in that dark place. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. The knowledge that a man sworn to lead them had delivered them into this nightmare was a unique kind of torment. It planted a seed of a new understanding in Simon's mind, that the greatest threats do not always come from the obvious enemy, but from the shadows within your own ranks. This lesson, learned in blood and pain, would become a central part of his creed. Manuel Roba, frustrated by his inability to break Simon, devised a final, horrific punishment. He had Simon buried alive. But this was not just any burial. He was sealed inside a coffin with the rotting corpse of the traitor, Major Vernon. The darkness was absolute, the air thick with the stench of death. It was meant to be the end, a final, grotesque mockery of his defiance. For 13 hours, Simon lay in that earthy tomb. The human spirit can be a fragile thing, but his was tempered like steel. In a moment of macabre inspiration, a terrifying will to live, he used a piece of the corpse, a jawbone, as a tool. With a strength born of pure survival, he clawed his way through the wood and the suffocating earth, back into the world of the living. He emerged, reborn from the grave, a specter covered in soil and the evidence of his ordeal. He was a ghost, stumbling out of the desert, a man who had literally faced death and returned. His body was battered, but his will was now ironclad. He had been tested in the most extreme way imaginable and had not broken. He was rescued and began a long physical recovery, but the mental scars of that coffin, of the betrayal, and of the torture would never fully fade. They became a part of him. He returned to England, to what he thought would be a sanctuary, a place to heal. But the nightmare was not over. Roba, enraged by Simon's escape and survival, sought a final, cruel vengeance. He sent the brainwashed remnants of Simon's own team to his family home. And in a single, devastating act of violence, Simon's mother, his brother, his sister-in-law, and his young nephew were taken from him. The man who crawled out of that desert grave had one thing left to live for, his family. Now they were gone. The last tether connecting Simon Riley to the man he once was had been severed. In that moment of utter desolation, Simon Riley truly died. And from the ashes of that life, the ghost was fully born. Let the heaviness of this transformation pass over you, a story of endings and beginnings, as you sink deeper into your rest. Chapter 3: The Birth of a Legend. From the profound darkness of his loss, a new purpose emerged, cold, focused, and singular: vengeance. The being known as Ghost was no longer a soldier following orders. He was a force of nature, a spirit of retribution. He withdrew from the official channels, operating in the deepest shadows, a hunter stalking his prey. His first targets were the brainwashed comrades who had killed his family, men who were once his brothers. He tracked them down, one by one. There was no joy in these acts, no satisfaction, only the cold, mechanical execution of a necessary task. He was closing a painful chapter, tying up loose ends of a tragedy that had consumed his past. Each encounter was a grim reminder of what he had lost, but he did not falter. His emotions were now buried deep beneath the mask of his new identity, locked away to allow him to function. With that grim task complete, he turned his full attention to the architect of his suffering, Manuel Roba. He became a phantom haunting the cartel's operations, a rumor of death that spread through their ranks. He was a shadow they could not grasp, a threat they could not see coming. He moved with a silence that was unnerving, his presence only announced by the consequences of his actions. In a final, direct confrontation, he cornered Roba's right-hand man, the man who had overseen so much of the torture and the burial now faced the ghost of his past actions. Ghost extracted the information he needed, the location of his final target. There was a brutal efficiency to it all, the final steps of a long and painful journey. The path to Roba was now clear. He stormed the compound, a one-man army fueled by a lifetime of pain. He was no longer just a man. He was the embodiment of every wrong that had been committed against him and his family. He fought his way to the heart of the cartel, to the man who had tried to bury him and had succeeded in destroying his world. The confrontation was swift and final. Justice, in its rawest form, was delivered. With Roba gone, the purpose that had sustained him for so long was suddenly fulfilled. He stood amidst the ruins of his enemy's empire, a hollow victory. The ghost of his vengeance was sated, but now what was he? He was a man without a past and without a future, a specter with no haunt. He had become his call sign, a legend whispered in special forces circles, a story of survival and retribution. It was at this crossroads that he was approached by a figure who dealt in such legends, General Shepard. Shepard saw in Ghost the ultimate weapon, a soldier unburdened by family, by past allegiances, whose entire being was now dedicated to the mission. He offered him a place in a new, elite, multinational unit, Task Force 141. It was a lifeline, a new purpose, a new family of sorts, built not on blood, but on a shared commitment to a shadow war. Ghost accepted. He traded his solitary quest for a place in a team, his personal vengeance for a global duty. He became Lieutenant Simon Ghost Riley of Task Force 141, a name and a title that gave structure to the formless spirit he had become. He had a new commander, Captain Price, and new brothers, like John Soap McTavish. He had a home of a kind. And so, the legend found a new battlefield. Let this sense of finding a new path, a new purpose, bring a feeling of calm, order to your thoughts. Chapter 4, The Mask and the Man. Now let us contemplate the most iconic symbol of this story, the skull-printed balaclava. To the world, it was a mask of intimidation, a symbol of death. But for Ghost, it was something far more profound. It was the boundary between the man and the myth, a shield that protected the last fragile remnants of Simon Riley from the harsh demands of Ghost. When he pulled on that mask, he was no longer a man with a painful past. He was a weapon, an operator, a phantom. The mask granted him anonymity, but it also granted him freedom. Hidden behind it, he could be the perfect soldier, devoid of the fear, pity, and doubt plague ordinary men. It was his ultimate tool, allowing him to fully embody the legend that had grown around him. The skull was not a promise of death for others, but a declaration that the man behind it had already faced his own mortality and had returned. Yet the man named Simon was not entirely gone. Those who fought closely with him, like Soap, would catch fleeting glimpses of the person behind the legend. A dry, dark sense of humor that would surface in the lulls between missions. A steadfast loyalty that was as unbreakable as his will. He was a professional, but he was not a machine. The mask concealed his face, but it could not always conceal his humanity. There are stories from his earlier days that highlight this duality. During a hostage situation at a school, it was Ghost who was sent in. The children were terrified, but the large soldier with the scary mask did not yell. He spoke to them in soft, calming tones, using words like sweetheart and love. He ensured they felt safe. In that moment, it was not the ghost the world feared, but Simon Riley, the protector, reassuring them. The mask was on, but the man's heart was visible. This is the central paradox of Ghost, the coexistence of the relentless operator and the compassionate man. He was a product of his trauma, yet he was not defined by it in every moment. He could be the bringer of swift, violent justice one moment, and a calming presence for the innocent the next. This complexity is what makes his story so enduring, a reminder that people are not simple, but are layered with history and contradiction. Within Task Force 141, he found a new kind of brotherhood. The bonds forged in combat are strong, but for Ghost, they were a lifeline. Captain Price's steady leadership, Soap's unwavering reliability, these were the pillars that gave the Ghost a structure to inhabit. He was not a solitary figure here. He was part of a team, his skills complementing theirs, creating a unit that was greater than the sum of its parts. He became known for his reliability, his cool head in a crisis, and his unparalleled skill in infiltration. He was the one who could get in and out without a trace, the shadow that moved through the enemy's midst unseen. He was the guardian in the darkness, watching over his team, ensuring their safety through his own silent, deadly work. He had found a place where his unique skills were not just valued, but essential. And so, as you relax, consider the balance within this figure. The mask and the man, the ghost and the protector. It is a story of integrating one's past with one's present, of finding a way to function without losing one's core self entirely. Let this idea of balance, of a peaceful center within a stormy exterior, soothe your own mind as you prepare for sleep. The storm is outside, but inside there can be calm. Chapter 5, The Eternal Watch. Every story has an end, and in the original tale, Ghost's end is one of profound betrayal. After a successful mission with his teammate, Gary Roach Sanderson, they were exfiltrated to a rendezvous point. They were met by General Shepard, the man who had given Ghost his new purpose. They had the intelligence that would win the day. But Shepard's loyalty was a lie. his motives his own. In a moment of shocking violence, Shepard betrayed them. He shot Roach, and as Ghost moved to help his fallen comrade, Shepard turned the gun on him. The shot was point blank. The legend who had survived torture, burial, and countless battles was felled not by a faceless enemy, but by the treachery of a man he was supposed to call brother. The ultimate betrayal had found him once again. To cover his crime, Shepard took the intelligence and callously dumped their bodies into a pit, setting them ablaze. The Ghost, who had risen from one grave, was consumed by fire in another. The image of his burning body, the skull mask stark against the flames, became an iconic, heartbreaking moment in gaming history. It was a brutal, unjust end for a soldier who had given everything. But that is not the end of the story. Legends do not die so easily. Ghost's legacy lived on. His death became a rallying cry for Captain Price and Soap, fueling their own quest for justice against Shepard. The memory of his sacrifice, his loyalty, and his skill became a permanent part of the spirit of Task Force 141. He was gone, but he was not forgotten. In the grand, rebooted timeline of the new Modern Warfare series, Ghost lives again. His past is more mysterious, more redacted, but his essence remains the same. He is still the quiet, skilled lieutenant, the loyal friend, the operator in the skull mask. This allows his story to continue, for new tales to be told, for the Ghost to continue his watch in a new generation. So as we end our story for tonight, do not focus on the fire and the betrayal. Instead, focus on the watchful guardian. Picture Ghost not in death, but in life. A silent, steady sentinel standing watch in the darkness. He is a symbol of resilience, of the ability to endure, and of the quiet, professional dedication of those who operate in the shadows to keep others safe. Let this final, peaceful image fill your mind. A silent figure watching over a peaceful world, ensuring that you can rest without fear. His watch is eternal, his duty unending. And so, with this guardian in the stories of our minds, we can let go of our own worries, our own daily battles, and surrender to the deep and healing power of sleep. Thank you for listening. I am sending you so much love and positivity, and I wish for you the most peaceful and restorative dreams. Let the story fade away, and let the quiet embrace of the night take over. Sleep well. Good night.